Old Mars was hot and rainy enough to sustain life, new study says August 29, 2019. Mars has long been known to have had water on its surface. Old Mars was hot and rainy enough to sustain life. New study says this is the landing site on Mars 2020. Chemical change by water, J0 crater delta. On ancient Mars, water carved channels and sediment transported to form deltas within lake basins, color enhanced to show mineral types. Credit: NASA/JPL Caltech/MSSS/JPL. But a new study suggests that between 3 and 4 billion years ago, the red planet was hot and humid enough to have huge storms and water flows, a life-sustaining environment. The new study, presented at the Goldschmidt Geochemistry Conference in Barcelona, compares the patterns of mineral deposits on Mars with those seen on Earth to support the hypothesis. Purian University professor Brian E. Horgan said in a statement, "We know that there were times when the surface of Mars was frozen. We know that there were periods when water flowed freely, but we do not know exactly when these periods were, and how long they lasted. We never sent unmanned missions to areas of Mars that might show us these early rocks, so we need to use Earth science to understand the geochemistry of what may have happened there. Our studies of weathering in radically different weather conditions, such as the Oregon waterfalls, Hawaii, Iceland, and elsewhere on Earth, can show us how climate affects the pattern of mineral deposition, as we see on Mars. By analyzing the patterns observed in the Martian mineral data collected by the Curiosity JEEP and NASA's CRISM spectrometer, and comparing them with those observed at various locations on Earth, the researchers found evidence that Mars had at least an extended period of storms and water flowing on its surface. The study says silica signatures were identified from the orbit of Mars on Amazonian periglacial terrain, and the Curiosity JEEP identified silica-rich crystalline materials in Hesperian lake sediments in the Gale crater. We suggest that these amorphous phases on Mars could have formed in cold climates during punctuated melting events. However, the most common Noquiana alteration signatures are crystalline clay minerals in zonal stratigraphy, for which the closest terrestrial analogues are deep weathering profiles, only known to form under climates dominated by persistent rain. If the silica signatures is like this, it is something important in the search for possible life on Mars. Artist representation shows how Mars may have been about 4 billion years ago, when almost half of the planet's northern hemisphere could have been covered by an ocean up to a mile deep in places. ESO/M. Kornmesser. For years, scientists have generally recognized that water existed on Mars. So far, however, scientists have debated what the weather on Mars was like, whether the water was frozen or whether the planet had warm temperatures and conditions to let water flow and potentially sustain life. Even if conditions on Mars were used to support running water, this is no longer the case. According to Space.com, current Mars has an average temperature of about 60 degrees Celsius. Add to the planet's thin atmosphere, which is largely carbon dioxide, and it's hard for Mars to sustain life as we know it. Horgan also said that researchers understand that the building blocks of life on Earth developed very quickly soon after the planet was formed, adding that water flow is essential for the development of life. Therefore, the evidence that we had running water on Mars will increase the chances that this simple life might have developed at about the same time it occurred on Earth. We hope that the Mars 2020 mission can take a closer look at these mineral conditions, and begin to answer exactly what conditions existed when Mars was still young. NASA hopes that the Curiosity spacecraft, which has a few more years before its nuclear power system degrades enough to significantly limit operations, can provide additional clues about the planet before the launch of the Mars 2020 mission. Mars appears larger and larger in the future space of the United States. In November, NASA announced that it had selected where its Mars 2020 spacecraft would land on the red planet. It is expected to reach the Martian surface on February 18, 2021. NASA's long-term goal is to send a manned mission to Mars in the 2030s. However, former astronauts, including Apollo 11 astronaut Michael Collins, think we should skip a return mission to the Moon, scheduled to 2024, and aim directly at Mars.